LSU has the #1 ranked recruiting class in the country, and if you read the latest updates on our Bengal Tiger site, there could be much more to come. That's why I got the one and only Shea Dixon, LSU insider, on today's video, because Bryce Underwood is back in the Bayou this weekend. Also, a couple new LSU picks on the recruiting prediction machine. But first, LSU fans, I was the first to predict Bryce Underwood to LSU, so that's worth a subscribe. Go ahead and smash it for me. Okay. Let's bring on Shea Dixon from the Bengal Tiger, and we're going to talk about some of these latest LSU predictions, starting with Micah Dotson. I saw you finally put a pick in. Chad Simmons put his in about a week or two ago. Why finally are you putting that pick in for Micah Dotson to LSU?
Well, it was on 3 RPM day, so I was celebrating that and participating. And look, I already have a pick in for James Simon, the in-state running back that they've been after. So I moved outside the state, and I think the guy you would put up there with Simon as the most likely, potentially next to commit, is Dotson. And as you mentioned, Chad Simmons flipped his pick. It was on Auburn. Now it's on LSU. Yeah. Billy and Body and I made picks on 3 guys on 3 RPM day to land at LSU. Dotson was one of them. And with him coming to town this weekend for a pretty massive junior day, Josh, I just feel like, okay, if there's been this amount of buzz, if he gave LSU his final visit in January, he backed off that Georgia commitment in early January, is he looking to drag things out, or does he want to go ahead and get his spot in another class? If it's jump into another class sooner than later, all signs are pointing to LSU. So I felt good about that pick, at least going into the weekend.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, Micah Dotson, Chad Simmons kind of already broke the news that he was trending heavily to LSU. So I'm not going to say I was disappointed in your Micah Dotson pick. I was just maybe thought you should have done it earlier. But you totally redeemed yourself with the next 2 picks, because if we're talking LSU recruiting, we're so used to talking about #1 players at their position. And Shea, you came through with 2 big RPM picks, one for Jakeem Stewart, the #1 overall player in the 2026 class. So Bryce Underwood, the #1 player in the 25. You just put a pick in for Jakeem Stewart to LSU, #1 player in the 2026 class. And you didn't stop there. You also picked Lamar Brown, who's the #1 interior offensive lineman, to also end up at LSU. Shea, you made these picks. I mean, you are really calling your shot. You're basically taking one dribble over the half-court line and pulling up from 3. What gives you the right to put in a pick for Stewart and Brown this early?
Well, look what LSU's done. They have the #1 class. They went up to Michigan and got Bryce Underwood. It isn't out of the realm of possibility that they could lock in a couple of Louisiana guys, which is what both these guys are, even with their lofty rankings. Early on the On3 industry rankings, Josh, both Jakeem Stewart at #1 and Lamar Brown also in the top 5 nationally, regardless of position. So 2 very highly thought of prospects. Here's my thought process. With Jakeem Stewart being the #1 player in the country, teams have been after him since middle school, coast to coast. He makes visits. He will make visits. I just think when the dust settles, LSU badly needs D linemen, and Bo Davis is as big a name as it gets, is back in Baton Rouge now recruiting defensive linemen to LSU. And he's a St. Aug kid. This is Leonard Fournette territory and Tyrann Mathieu and so on. When you've got Frank Wilson recruiting New Orleans in that school and being on Stewart for as long as he's been, I just think that when the dust settles, it'll look good for LSU there. Then with Lamar Brown, this is the benefit of having a kid who goes to high school on your campus. Look, sometimes it doesn't work out. A lot of U-High kids have gone elsewhere over the years, but not recently. And they've got Keelan Moses committed, a U-High linebacker, 4-star for this 2025 class. When I looked at the 2026 class next year, Lamar Brown is that big guy in vision. Because of attending high school on LSU's campus, he's visiting almost all the time when it's an open contact period. So he'll be at a lot of practices coming up. I don't think he shuts things down soon. Like, you know, he's only a junior, about to be a junior. But I do think that when you look at kind of how things could unfold moving forward, he's one in that 2026 class. I don't think they let leave the city.
All right, we'll see how those work out. Yeah, I just appreciate you dropping them early. It kind of sets the tone, and Shea, I think you should always set the tone. So that being said, you mentioned that yesterday was kind of RPM pick day for On3. That's why we're talking about so many picks and predictions on this channel all week. Was there any picks that you saw around the network that surprised you?
I don't know if surprise is the word, because I do feel that this is LSU's main competition, but it's notable that Anquan Fagan's one of the top 5 safeties in the On3 industry rankings, prospect coming out of Alabama, got an RPM by Jeffrey Lee at the Auburn site to Auburn. Now, it was at 55% confidence, so wasn't a through-the-roof 90% done deal type of thing, but he's a guy in the month of February that LSU has been really pursuing heavily, Josh, and there was a turnover on the defensive staff where every on-field coach was let go. They bring in all new on-field coaches, and they've made Fagans a big priority. He's about to visit this month. So do I think he shuts things down, for Auburn any moment now? No, but I thought it was notable that there was at least some confidence that the one-time Southern Cal commit could be looking to stay in state versus maybe leaving. And I think LSU, if he left the state, is the team to beat right now.
Okay. This weekend, Bryce Underwood, the number 1 overall player who committed to LSU in early January, will be back in the Bayou for the first time since his commitment. So we know he's going to be doing some recruiting. We're going to get to that in a minute. Is he going to be able to catch a practice while he's in town? Will it sync up with LSU's practice schedule?
Yeah, that's the good news, is that they practice Friday and then they have a junior day Saturday. And a lot of guys are coming in for both or doing one or the other, but they do have a heavy emphasis on getting guys to practice. So he'll be able to be in this weekend, and then he'll be back on April 13th for the spring game. And he's been pretty public about saying, I'm not taking other visits. I'm not talking with other teams. I'm locked in. No reason not to be at this point considered. LSU has the number 1 class. Everything has been on the up and up on the recruiting trail in terms of building out this 2025 group in Baton Rouge, which is right now ahead of Ohio State and others, is the best in the country. So Underwood locked in and now setting 2 visits in what will be the span of about a month.
Yeah, and it's no coincidence that with Bryce Underwood on campus, there'll be some other big names. Here's a list of who. Well, I picked out the offensive targets, guys that I think Bryce Underwood could maybe help LSU recruit a little bit. And we'll just start at the top. Caleb Cunningham, the number 2 ranked wide receiver. Now, LSU already has the number 1 ranked wide receiver committed, and now they are going to get their shot at Caleb Cunningham. Chad seems to think that Mississippi State is the team to beat here, but does LSU have a foot in the door?
I think they've got more than a foot in the door. And look, when you've got Bryce Underwood coming in, you've got Harlem Berry, the number 1 running back, coming in, who's committed. And then, as you mentioned, a commitment from the number 1 wide receiver in De'Corian Moore. He'll be in town this weekend. Okay. When you put yourself around that kind of talent, including Underwood, as a receiver, it catches your attention. So I think this is a big weekend to get Cunningham on campus. And I agree with Chad, and I think that certainly in the sense that when there are elite Mississippi kids, no matter the state of the programs, Ole Miss and State make it very tough to get those guys to leave the state. I mean, even Alabama over the years in the heyday wasn't going in and just plucking every top Mississippi kid. So it's tough sledding, I think, for all teams who are trying to get Caleb Cunningham. That being said, coming off a year where they had the number 1 offense, and now you've put together this type of commitment list that's really heavy on offensive skill talent, including at quarterback, Cunningham is certainly looking at LSU as a viable option.
All right, and then there's another 5-star wide receiver that we got to mention. That's Jamie French out of Jacksonville, Florida, and he is one of the most highly recruited wide receivers in the entire country. He's going to be on campus. Is it fair to say here that LSU may be in a better spot with Caleb Cunningham than they are Jamie French? Maybe a bit on the outside looking in right now with French?
I think that's fair, and I think you look around at some other guys around the country. Khalil Lockett, one of the best receivers, they might be in a good spot for us. So they position themselves well with a number of guys. But with Jamie French, who's a one-time Alabama commitment, you mentioned schools are in Florida, obviously Miami, they're going to press. But Ohio State landed an on-3 RPM pick on RPM pick day this week. So that's notable that at least Ohio State feels like, hey, look, they're really in the race there as well. So if I'm handicapping it, and look, this could change. He visits this weekend, and what if he has a great visit weekend with the aforementioned quarterback and receivers and running backs that are all committed that are going to be there, let alone the staff, and things go well? Does LSU shoot up the board? Maybe, but I think right now with the number 1 receiver in the country committed coming out of Texas, and then the number 1 receiver in Louisiana committed in Teron Francis, they'll take 2 to 3 more guys. I would handicap it as maybe French being behind guys like Cunningham, Lockett, and some others in terms of maybe the likelihood they end up at LSU.
The next two names on the list, offensive lineman Micah Dotson and running back James Simon. Shay, you have predictions on each of them to LSU. Any chance that they could end their recruitment this weekend?
Yeah, look, with DeBose, it's about, is he ready to shut things down? It was just 2 months ago that he decommitted from Georgia.
Right.
So does he want to go through a whole entire process again, or does he feel good enough about LSU coming out of Mobile, which is not too far of a drive from Baton Rouge, to say, hey, look, I'm ready to get on board? A lot of people around the LSU program feel like they've trended very well there, and we've got our picks in. So that one won't surprise me. Simon, it would maybe surprise me, Josh, if he committed this weekend, but it wouldn't shock me. It would surprise me because he says, I want to make a number of more visits and
Mm-hmm.
officials before I decide. It wouldn't shock me because, look, Frank Wilson's after him. He wants the 1-2 punch of Harlem Berry and
Yeah.
James Simon in Louisiana. And as we've talked about, you'll have Underwood on campus. You'll have DeCorian Moore on campus. So if he's around all the commits and coaches, does he feel the itch and say, all right, I'll shut it down? We've seen it happen before. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll put those two names high on the list of guys I'm watching this weekend.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, big list of names. Go to Bengal Tiger and enjoy. It's a huge list. A who's who of recruits will be in the Bayou this weekend. Shay, we'll catch up on Sunday for the Inside Scoop Monday edition. I want to talk to you because LSU is going to have one of the biggest visit weekends coming out of the dead period. So go check it out. You guys do a great job. Appreciate you stopping by, taking a little time to talk LSU recruiting today on the Inside Scoop. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed that, go check out the hundreds of videos that we have on this channel, and also do me a favor, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel.